She sat on that horse like a queen on a throne, and Kalen Reed, standing in the dust of the yard he used to own, knew his life was over. It wasn't just the horse, it was the land, the ranch, the 10 years of his sweat and blood baked into that dirt, and it was all gone. The woman, Kiona, looked down at him. Her eyes were dark, unreadable. Her people had gathered at his property line 3 days ago. They hadn't come with rifles, they'd come with paper, documents older than the county, older than the territory, older than any law Kalen had ever known. Papers that said this land was never his. Papers the territorial judge had looked at for less than 5 minutes before looking at Kalen with something that looked a lot like pity. The Apache claim is legitimate, Mr. Reed. I'm sorry. And just like that, 10 years of work vanished. He'd expected them to force him off. Burn the house, run the cattle. That's how these things usually went. But Kiona had other plans. She'd ridden up alone yesterday, her traditional dress stark against the brown landscape. Her offer had been quiet, simple, and it had ripped Kalen's pride clean out of his chest. Stay. He'd stared at her. Work the land, she'd said, her voice flat. Take orders from me. She'd laid out the terms like she was buying feed. He'd get the small hands cabin at the edge of the property. He'd tend the horses, mend the fences. He'd be a guest on the land he had built. In exchange, he'd have food, shelter, and the privilege, she'd called it, of staying. Kalen had almost choked. He'd almost told her exactly where she could put her privilege. But then he'd looked. He'd looked at the main house he'd re-roofed himself, the corral he'd built from nothing, the fields he'd cleared of rock until his hands were just open wounds. Walking away wasn't just losing a ranch. It was losing himself. So he'd spat in the dust and said, yes, and he'd hated himself for every letter in that word. Now she sat there, waiting. The morning sun was brutal. She hadn't moved. She was waiting for the moment, the one where she made it official. Kiona leaned forward on the saddle horn. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the air like a razor. You work for me now. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. A new law that rearranged his entire world. He felt something twist in his gut. Pure, unfiltered rage. He wanted to pull her off that horse, tell her to find someone else to humiliate. But the other part of him, the part that had seen his father lose everything, the part that knew what real hunger felt like. That part knew survival was just pride spelled different. He met her eyes. If she wanted him to bend, he'd bend. But he wouldn't break. What do you need done first? His voice was rougher than he wanted. For just a second, something flickered in her eyes. Surprise? Maybe. He couldn't tell. She pointed toward the eastern pasture. Those animals need proper attention. They've been neglected. The words stung. She was right. He'd been so busy fighting her in court, he'd let things slip. But hearing her say it, on his land, his hands curled into fists. I'll handle it, he said, biting off the words. She watched him for another long, heavy moment. He felt like he was a bug under glass. Then she did something he never expected. She smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile that said, I know exactly what this is costing you, and I'm enjoying it. Good, she said. She turned her horse in one smooth, expert motion and rode toward the main house. His house. Kalen stood there, breathing in the dust she'd left behind. He'd agreed to stay. He'd agreed to work. But what he hadn't agreed to was losing. She'd made a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. She'd let him stay. And Kalen Reed wasn't just a rancher. He was a survivor. He'd make himself indispensable. He'd watch. He'd learn. And somewhere, somehow, he would find leverage. He was starting from nothing, all over again. But this time, he was starting from the inside. He saw the problem from 50 yards out. The bay mare in the east pasture was favoring her left foreleg. The roan's hooves were overgrown, splitting at the edges. They were neglected. She was right. and it made him sick. He approached the mare slowly, his voice low and calm. She nickered, lifting her head. At least the animals still knew him. "You should start with the mare." Kiona's voice came from right behind him. He hadn't even heard her approach. His shoulders went tight. "She's been limping for 2 days," she said. Kalen ran his hand down the mare's leg, feeling the heat, the slight swelling. "I noticed." "Did you?" That little question, that sliver of doubt, made his jaw clench. He ignored her, focusing on the horse. It was a mild sprain, nothing serious, if he treated it now. He straightened and finally looked at her. She'd dismounted and was standing 10 feet away, just watching. "She needs rest and cold water treatments," Kalen said. 3, maybe 4 days. "Think you can handle that without supervision?" The sarcasm was thick, but Kiona didn't even blink. "Yes," he said, his voice clipped. She tilted her head. "You're angry." "I'm fine. You're angry that I'm here, that I'm giving you orders, that everything you built now belongs to someone else." He met her gaze. "Does it matter what I feel?" "No," she said, simple and cold. "But I prefer to know what I'm working with." Working with. Like he was a shovel. He wanted to say something that would crack that perfect, calm face. But he knew that's what she wanted. She wanted him to explode, to give her a reason to finish the job and cast him out. He wouldn't give it to her. Instead, he turned back to the roan, picking up its hoof. Kiona moved closer. He could smell sage on her clothes. "These haven't been maintained," she said. "I know." "Why not?" "I had other priorities," he said, the words tight in his throat. "Not anymore," Kiona said. She stepped right next to him. "From now on, these animals are your first, second, and last priority. Do you understand?" He looked up. She was so close, he could see a small white scar just above her left eyebrow. "I understand." "Good." She held his gaze. The air between them felt heavy, charged. It wasn't hate. It was something more complicated. Then she stepped back. "I'll send someone with supplies for the mare. Show them what you need." She started to walk away. "Why?" The word just came out. She stopped and looked back. "Why what?" "Why keep me here? You could hire anyone. Someone who'd be grateful for the work, not someone who resents you." For the first time, her mask slipped, just for a second. He saw something move behind her eyes. It wasn't confidence. It looked almost uncertain. "Maybe that's exactly why," she said, so quietly he barely heard it. Then she turned, mounted her horse, and rode away, leaving Kalen standing in the field with a head full of questions. Maybe that's exactly why. What did that mean? She wanted him here because he hated her? It didn't make any sense. But as he turned back to the horses, a cold feeling washed over him. This wasn't just business. This wasn't just about land. This was a game, and Kiona had just let him know that he didn't even understand the rules. By midday, Kalen had the mare settled in a shaded stall. He was preparing a cold compress when a shadow fell over him. He turned, expecting Kiona. It wasn't. The man watching him from the fence line was younger, maybe 25, with the same dark eyes as Kiona, but where hers were controlled, his were on fire. He was built like a bull, wearing a mix of traditional gear and practical ranch clothes, and he looked at Kalen like he was something to be scraped off a boot. "You must be the one who lost everything," the man said. Kalen stood up slowly. "Kalen Reed. I know who you are." The man vaulted the fence in one easy athletic move. "I'm Naichi, Kiona's brother." Of course he was. The resemblance was there, in the hard set of his jaw. "She send you to check on me?" "She doesn't know I'm here." Naichi walked closer, his eyes scanning the mare's leg. "This one will be fine. You know what you're doing." "Thanks. Don't thank me." Naichi turned his full attention to Kalen. I want to know why you're really here. Your sister made an offer. My sister makes a lot of decisions I don't agree with. Naichi's voice hardened. Keeping you here is one of them. Kalen felt the tension ratchet up. You got something to say? Say it. Your people, Naichi said, took this land, built on it, profited from it, and now that it's been returned, you want to stay? You want to watch? Make sure we don't mess up your precious ranch? That's not it. Or maybe, Naichi interrupted, stepping closer. You're planning something, waiting for a chance to take it back. The accusation stung, because a small part of it was true. I'm here because I have nowhere else to go, Kalen said. Your sister offered me work, I took it. That's all. Naichi laughed, a short, ugly sound. That's all? You expect me to believe the great Kalen Reed, who fought our claim for months, who hired lawyers? You just gave up? Decided to be a hired hand? Believe what you want. Naichi studied him, his eyes narrowed to slits. Stay away from my sister. The words came out of nowhere. What? I see how she looks at you, Naichi spat, like you're some kind of puzzle she needs to solve. She thinks keeping you here proves something, justice or mercy or something. He poked a hard finger into Kalen's chest. But I know men like you. You'll use anything, anyone. I haven't, not yet. Naichi's eyes were burning. But if I see you try to manipulate her, if I see you use her, I will make you regret the day you were born. Before Kalen could even breathe, Naichi turned and stalked back to the fence. He paused at the top rail. One more thing, he said, looking back. That land claim. It wasn't random. Kalen froze. Kiona spent 3 years researching. 3 years gathering the evidence. She didn't just want any land returned. Naichi gave him a smile that was all teeth. She wanted this specific piece, this specific ranch. You might want to ask yourself why? Then he was gone. Kalen stood there, the world tilting. 3 years. This specific ranch. This wasn't about a legal claim. This wasn't about justice for her people. This was personal. He looked toward the main house where Kiona was. She hadn't just taken his land, she had targeted him. And for the first time, Kalen Reed was truly, deeply afraid. He didn't see Kiona for 3 days. He worked, he fixed the fences, tended the horses, kept his head down, but Naichi's words echoed in his head. Why this ranch? He was walking back to his cabin as the sun bled out of the sky, his mind still turning it over, when Naichi stepped out from the shadow of the barn. Kalen stopped. You're still here, Naichi said. It wasn't a question. I'm still working. Naichi walked toward him, his hands loose at his sides. But this time, his energy was different. It wasn't hot rage. It was cold, calculating. I told my sister she was wrong to keep you, Naichi said. I told her you were a snake in the grass. And she didn't listen. Naichi stopped a few feet away. She's complicated. She sees you and she sees, I don't know, a project, something to fix. He reached into a leather pouch at his belt. She's smart, Naichi said, but she's not wise, not about this. He pulled something out and tossed it at Kalen's feet, a heavy leather bag. It landed in the dust with a dull, heavy thud, the sound of gold. Kalen looked at the bag, then at Naichi. What is this? It's your new beginning, Naichi said. It's enough to buy a dozen ranches in the next territory. Enough to start over, clean. Enough to forget this place ever existed. Kalen stared at the bag. Freedom, an easy way out. Everything he'd just been accused of. Manipulation. This was the opposite. This was a clean break. Take it, Naichi urged, his voice dropping. Take it and ride out tonight. Disappear. Stop. Complicating things for her. Kalen looked at the gold, glistening in the twilight. He could be gone. He could be free of Kiona, of Naichi, of the humiliation, of the ghosts. He bent down, his hand hovering over the bag. Naichi almost smiled. Kalen's hand closed, and he picked the bag up. He weighed it in his hand. A life. Then he looked Naichi square in the eye, and he threw the bag back, hitting him square in the chest. "I'm not my father," Kalen said, his voice quiet, but harder than steel. Naichi caught the bag, his face twisting from surprise into a cold, dark fury. He'd offered mercy. Kalen had refused. "You just made your last mistake," Naichi whispered. He turned and walked away, the heavy bag of gold swinging at his side. Kalen knew, right then, that he hadn't just refused a bribe. He'd just declared war. The answer came on the fourth night. A storm rolled in, the kind that tries to rip the sky in half. Rain came down in sheets, and thunder shook the ground. Kalen was checking the horses in the barn, making sure the old roof was holding, when the main door burst open. It was Kiona. She was soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes wide. "The roof in the house!" she shouted over the wind. "It's leaking! East bedroom! I need to move things!" Kalen grabbed a heavy tarp. "I'll help." They ran through the mud and driving rain, lightning splitting the sky above them, making the world flash white and black. Inside the main house, his house, water was pouring from a crack in the ceiling of the east bedroom. "There's more in the closet!" Kiona yelled, dragging boxes away from the spreading pool of water. Kalen ran to the closet, pulled the door open, and stopped dead. Inside, tucked behind some blankets, was a small wooden box. He knew that box. He'd recognized the initials carved into the lid anywhere. C.R. Charles Reed, his father. His hands went numb. Where did you get this?" Kiona looked up, her frantic energy gone. Her eyes found the box in his hands. Her face went pale. "It was here," she said quietly. "In the attic. Hidden." Kalen lifted it down. His hands were shaking. He'd thought all his father's things were lost years ago, sold off to pay debts after he died. Kalen had spent 5 years working to buy this ranch back, but by then, everything personal was gone, or so he'd thought. He opened the lid, letters, documents, and a leather-bound journal, his father's journal. "You should read them," Kiona said. She was standing by the window, backlit by a flash of lightning, and her voice. She sounded almost afraid. "Why?" "Because then you'll understand," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You'll understand why I spent 3 years taking this land back." She moved closer, rain and sweat dripping from her face. "Your father didn't buy this ranch," she said, her voice shaking with a sudden raw emotion. "He stole it. From my grandfather." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" "Read the letters," she cried. "Read how he promised my grandfather a partnership, how he promised to share the grazing lands, how he got this place for almost nothing because my people were starving." "My father wasn't he?" she shot back, her eyes blazing. "Read his own words, Kalen. Read what he wrote after the deal was signed. How he fenced off the river, how he threatened to have my grandfather arrested when he tried to use the paths his people had used for 1,000 years. Thunder cracked, shaking the very foundations of the house. Kalen looked from the journal in his hands to the woman in front of him. This wasn't about land. This wasn't about money. This was about a promise, a betrayal. "Why? Why didn't you just tell me this?" "Would you have believed me?" she said, moving closer still. They were only inches apart now. "You had to lose it, Kalen. You had to feel what it was like, to have everything you built taken away by a piece of paper. So this was all revenge. This was justice," she whispered. She reached out, her fingers brushing the box. "But I didn't expect you to stay." She stopped, catching herself. Didn't expect what? The rain hammered the roof. She looked at him, and the leader was gone. The cold, hard woman who'd taken his life. She was gone. In her place was just Kiona, and she looked terrified. "I didn't expect you," she said softly, "to make this so complicated." Before he could speak, before he could even breathe, footsteps pounded in the hall. Naichi. He stood in the doorway, soaked and furious, his eyes taking in the scene. His sister, Kaylin, the box, the tension so thick it was suffocating, his face darkened into a mask of pure rage. "Kiona," he growled, "the council is meeting, now." She straightened, the mask slamming back into place. Without another look at Kaylin, she turned and followed her brother out of the room. Kaylin stood alone in the leaking dark house, clutching his father's secrets. He'd just found out the truth about his past, and he had a terrible, sinking feeling he was about to be erased from the future. Kaylin spent the rest of the night reading his father's words by lamplight, and with every page, a piece of him died. It was all there, the manipulation, the lies, the partnership offered and then denied, the casual, cruel racism, the entries celebrating how he'd outsmarted Kiona's grandfather. Worse, there were threats. "Gave orders to my men," one entry read. "If they try to cross the river again, they are to be shot on sight." His father wasn't just a hard man, he was a monster. By dawn, Kaylin understood. He understood Kiona's 3 years of research, he understood her coldness, he understood that her revenge was nothing short of a miracle of restraint. He was burning the last page of the journal when Naichi's voice cut through the morning air. "The council is waiting." Kaylin stepped out of the cabin. Naichi was there, with 2 other men from the tribe. Their faces were stone. "What council?" "The council that's deciding your fate," Naichi said. "Come on." It wasn't a request. They marched him to the main house. The rain had stopped, but the world felt gray, washed out. They didn't go inside. The council, a group of 10 elders, with Kiona at their head, was gathered on the porch. Kaylin stood in the mud below them, like a prisoner. "Naichi has brought a complaint before us," one of the elders said, his voice deep. "He says you are a poison here." Kaylin's eyes found Kiona's. She wouldn't look at him. "He says," the elder continued, "that he offered you gold to leave, a generous offer to avoid complications, and you refused." Naichi stepped forward. "He refused because he's trying to manipulate my sister. He's using her guilt, her interest, to win back what his father stole. He is a snake, just like Charles Reed." The council murmured. "Kiona," the elder said, "you defended him. You said he deserved a chance. Why?" Kiona finally looked at Kaylin. Her face was pale, exhausted. "I was wrong," she said, her voice dead. Kaylin felt his stomach drop. I thought he was different," she said, her eyes holding his. "But last night, he found his father's journal. He found the truth, and all I saw in his eyes was the same hunger, the same desire for this land." She was lying. Kaylin realized it in an instant. She was lying to protect him, or she was lying to save herself. "He cannot stay," Naichi declared. "He is a threat to our peace, a threat to our leader. I say he leaves, now, with nothing." The elder looked at the others. They nodded. "The council has decided," the elder said, looking down at Kaylin. "You have until sunset to be off this land. If you are found here after dark, you will be removed, forcibly." It was over. He'd lost. He'd lost it all over again. Naichi smiled, a cold, triumphant smile. The council members turned and went inside, followed by Naichi. Only Kiona remained. She stood on the porch watching him. He just looked at her. "You lied." "They would have hurt you, Kaylin," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Naichi. He was ready to kill you. I had to make them choose exile. So you destroyed me instead." "I saved you," she cried, tears welling in her eyes. This is the only way you get out of here alive. She came down the steps, stopping in front of him. Go, she pleaded. Just go, please. Start over. She was right. It was over. He'd lost. He turned to walk back to his cabin, to grab the few things he owned. Kaylin. He stopped, but didn't turn around. There is another way, she said, her voice trembling. He turned back. Her face was a wreck of tears and desperation. What way? They voted to exile you, she said. The lone man. The threat. What are you saying? They can't exile the husband of their leader. The world stopped. The air went thin. Kiona, what are you? Stay, she whispered, stepping toward him. Don't stay as a worker. Don't stay as a prisoner. Stay as my partner, my husband. His heart was hammering against his ribs. This was insane. You know why they'd say I was doing it? He said, his voice rough. They'd say it's exactly what Naichi accused me of, manipulating you to get the land back. Is that what you'd be doing? She asked, her eyes searching his. No, he said, the word torn out of him. Then it doesn't matter what they say. She grabbed his hands. I know it's real. What's happening between us. It's real, and it's terrified me from the first day, but I won't let them take it from us. He looked at this woman, this impossible, strong, terrifying, broken woman, and he knew in that instant that he loved her. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to pull her to him. But before he could speak, a shout split the air. Fire! Fire in the northern pasture! Kiona's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide with pure animal terror. No, she whispered. The breeding stock! The mares! She was already running. Kaylin ran after her, his heart in his throat. The northern pasture held the future of the ranch, all the best horses, and it was going up in flames. It was worse than he thought. By the time they reached the pasture, the entire south fence line was a wall of fire. The dry grass had caught, and the wind was fanning it into an inferno. Inside, a dozen horses, the most valuable animals on the ranch, were trapped. They were screaming, running in circles, their eyes white with terror. Naichi and the other men were there, trying to break through the burning rails, but the heat was too intense. It was driving them back. The gate! Kiona screamed. Open the gate! It's blocked, Naichi yelled. The fire's already past it. Kaylin's mind was racing. He'd been in this pasture yesterday. He'd seen a weak section on the west side, rotted posts. He didn't think. He just moved. He sprinted toward the west fence, grabbing a heavy, fallen fence post as he ran. Kaylin! Kiona screamed his name. It's too late! Get back! He ignored her. The horses were dying. He reached the weak section. The fire was close, licking at the grass just yards away. He raised the post and slammed it against the rotted wood. Once. It cracked. Twice. It splintered. A third time, with all the strength in his body. The rails shattered. He kicked the broken, smoking wood aside, creating a gap, barely wide enough. He plunged through the opening into the smoke. It was like breathing fire. The air was poison. He couldn't see, couldn't breathe. The horses screamed. He forced himself to be calm. Panic would kill them all. He found the lead mare, her eyes rolling. He grabbed her halter. Come on, girl! Shuaye! He pulled, shoved, using his body to force her toward the gap. She smelled the clean air and bolted through, one out. He turned back into the inferno. His lungs were seizing. He ripped his shirt off, wrapping it around his face. He found 3 more, huddled together, paralyzed by fear. Move! He roared, his voice cracking. He slapped their rumps, pushing, driving them. They stampeded past him, through the opening. 4 out. He could hear Kiona screaming outside. He couldn't make out the words. He went deeper. The smoke was thicker here, black and oily. The roar of the fire was deafening. He stumbled, falling to his knees. His lungs were on fire. Get up. Get up. He pushed himself up. He saw them, 4 more, running wild. He put himself in their path, waving his arms, turning them back toward the gap. They thundered past, so close he felt the heat from their bodies. 8 out. He squinted through the smoke, and his heart stopped. The last 4. They were trapped. The fire had circled around, cutting them off. They were in a small corner, surrounded by a ring of flame. And one of them, a young mare. It was Kiona's favorite, the one she'd raised from a foal. He had seconds. The smart move was to leave, get himself out, save what was saved. But Kalen Reed had never been that smart. He ran. He ran at the wall of fire. He used the post he still carried, beating at the burning grass, stomping, kicking, creating a path. It wasn't much, just a narrow, smoking gap. "Come on!" he screamed, his throat raw. "Now!" The horses saw it. They bolted. 1, 2, 3 made it through. But the 4th, Kiona's mare, she stumbled. Her leg gave out. She went down, screaming. Kalen didn't hesitate. He dove through the flames. He grabbed her halter, hauling with everything he had left. "Get up!" She struggled, scrambling to her feet, favoring her leg. Behind them, the path he'd made was gone, erased by fire. There was only one way out. Back through the gap he'd first made, and the mare couldn't run. He wrapped his arm around her neck, half dragging, half carrying her. She fought him, terrified, but he held on. The smoke was total. He couldn't see. He couldn't breathe. His boots hit the broken fence line. He shoved the mare through the opening with the last of his strength. And he fell after her, collapsing into the clean air, his body on fire. Hands were on him, pulling him. Water splashed over his face, his arms. He heard shouting, crying. He tried to stand, but his legs were gone. He blinked, his eyes streaming, and saw Kiona. She dropped to her knees beside him, her face covered in soot and tears. "You stupid, reckless fool," she choked out. She grabbed him, pulling him against her, holding him so tight he could barely breathe. Over her shoulder, Kalen saw them, the council, Naichi. They were all just standing there, watching him. Their faces weren't angry anymore. They weren't suspicious. It was respect. Naichi walked over slowly. He knelt beside Kalen. For a long moment, he just looked at him. Then, he placed a hand on Kalen's shoulder. "You could have died," Naichi said, his voice thick. "The horses, they could have been replaced." His grip tightened. "You saved them all. Every single one, including the mare my sister raised from birth." But Naichi wasn't looking at him anymore. He was looking at the ground, just past where Kalen had fallen. He reached out and picked something up from the dirt. Something small, a piece of flint tied with a specific leather thong. Naichi's face went white. He stood up slowly, holding the flint. He turned and walked toward the council. He stopped in front of one of the elders, a man named Taza, the one who had spoken most harshly against Kalen. Naichi held up the flint. "This is yours," he said. Taza's face crumpled. "You," Naichi whispered, his voice shaking with a rage that was colder than ice. "You did this. You set the fire." The council gasped. Kiona stared in disbelief. "Naichi, Taza stammered. He had to be tested. I had to know if he was one of them. If he would run." "You tested him?" Naichi's voice was deadly. "You would have burned our future. Our entire future. To test him? I didn't think the wind." Taza fell to his knees. I didn't mean..." The council erupted. "Traitor! Exile!" They turned to Kiona. "Speak, Kiona. What is his justice?" Kiona looked at the weeping elder. She looked at Naichi, who was ready to kill. Then she looked at Kalen. "He saved our future," she said, her voice shaking. Kalen. We'll decide." All eyes turned to him. Kalen pushed himself up, leaning on Kiona. His burns were screaming. He looked at Taza. He saw a terrified old man, so blinded by the past, so convinced of his righteousness, that he'd almost destroyed everything. He saw his own father. Kalen limped forward, his body aching. He stood over Taza. "No," Kalen said, his voice hoarse. The crowd went silent. "No more exile," Kalen said. "No more revenge. No more burning the past." He looked at Taza. "You'll rebuild the fence, every post. You'll clear the field, and you'll do it. With me." He held out his raw, bandaged hand. Taza, his body shaking with sobs, looked at the hand, and he took it. Naichi stared, stunned. Then he looked at Kalen, and for the first time he smiled. A real smile. He clapped his hand on Kalen's good shoulder. "Partner," he said. The word hung in the air. The council members looked at each other, and one by one they nodded. Partner. Kalen looked at Kiona. Her face was a mess of soot and tears and love. "You work with me now," she whispered, a broken smile on her lips. "Then what am I?" he whispered back. She leaned in, ignoring everyone. "You're the man I choose," she said, "if you'll have me." 2 weeks later, Kalen stood on the hill overlooking the northern pasture. The new fence line was almost complete. His hands were still bandaged, but they were healing. Everything was healing. Kiona rode up on the bay mare, the same one he'd first tended. She dismounted and stood beside him. "The council met this morning," she said. He tensed. "They want to formalize your position." She smiled. "Not as a worker, as a partner, in managing this land." He looked out at the valley. "I don't deserve that." "Deserve has nothing to do with it," she said, taking his hand. "You proved yourself. Not by working hard, but by caring about something bigger than your own claim. You saved our future." She squeezed his hand. "Naichi's the one who proposed it. He said, 'Any man willing to die for horses that aren't his earns the right to help decide their future.' A weight Kalen hadn't even known he was carrying, just lifted. "So what happens now?" he asked. Kiona pulled him closer, careful of his burns. "Now," she said, "we build something, together, something neither of us could have built alone." He thought of his father's journal, his father, who saw land as something to own. Kalen looked at Kiona, and he knew the truth. "You don't own land, you belong to it." "I can do that," he said. She leaned up and kissed him. It wasn't desperate, like in the barn. It was slow and certain and real. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "One more thing. The main house. I'm moving my things to the east wing." She held his gaze. "The west wing is yours, if you want it." He knew what she was offering. A shared space, a shared life. Kalen smiled. "I think," he said, pulling her close again, "I'd rather share the east wing." She laughed, and the sound carried across the valley. "Come on, partner," she said, mounting her horse. "We've got work to do." Kalen Reed had lost everything he thought he wanted, his ranch, his legacy, his past, and in losing it all, he'd found the one thing he'd never known he needed: a home. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We've got another story of betrayal and redemption coming next week that you will not want to miss. Thanks for watching.